Progress has been made. I wasn't really sure how to open this video, so here's what I've been working on, and we're going to talk about it. I did break ChatGPT with a game-related math question. That's just clickbait. I didn't break it. My query ran out of compute time on the free account because apparently the query required some unexpected processing time. Look at me, helping use up all the drinking water in the desert. I'm not proud of it. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes we move full speed off the deep rail, and we thank our patrons for supporting ridiculous inside jokes. If you don't know what the deep rail is, you gotta watch the last video. I'm gonna show you what I've been working on for this new little skirmish game called the Cascade. Now basically, I've just word processed it. Well, I guess maybe another way to put it is I've made a dent in word processing my notes. Anyway, I'm using Apple Pages here. This is what I use to make my D&D adventure Mistfin Isle. And I like using it because it's like a free baby layout sort of InDesign thing. And, you know, whatever final PDF or ebook or whatever fully designed document concerning this little project eventually comes out in, if it does, I'd be laying it out in Pages anyway, so why not just start here? You'll notice that even though this is a rough draft, I'm working in, again, a basic layout format for no other reason than I just like doing that. I like messing with design decisions while I should be writing, because I'm an excellent professional procrastinator, just like you. Don't take offense if you're not a procrastinator. Donuts are in the back. The cool thing is all this can be changed, all this stuff can be changed, edited. I can add graphics, I can add images, whatever, and it's all real-time updatable. So in the long run, for me, this is just a fun way to work on this thing, and it puts stuff into a format that I might eventually work with anyway. Even if I don't, it's still in some kind of format. So what? I also built 2 sets of digital domino graphics in Photoshop, one light set and one dark set, and these are perfect for illustrating how the Cascade works on paper. Now, here's my current table of contents, which, of course, is serving as my outline for all the sections I need to write up. Now, like I mentioned before, I haven't played that many skirmish games, so I've been using Joe McCullough's books and the one edition of Kill Team core rules that I have to help me figure out how to lay out all this information. And I will say one thing about this writing exercise. It's definitely an exercise in technical clarity. Now, coming from a fiction writing background, this is kind of new and interesting to me, and it's been more than a little eye-opening as far as, how clear are my sentence structures and instructions. Basically, writing rules that make sense on a sentence structure level is tricky sometimes. Now, the first thing I wanted to get down was the core mechanic of the tile cascade and how that works. I'm going to keep saying it. Remember, this is all first draft, rough draft stuff. Right off the bat, I felt like I didn't want to use the term domino throughout this whole rule book. So I put a little blurb here at the beginning to basically say, hey, you know and I know that these are dominoes, but from now on, we're going to call them tiles. I just like that word better in the context of a tabletop game. It just has more of a tabletop aesthetic, right? And I like the genericness of that term, even though I guess domino is a generic term too, but it just happens to be the name of one of the worst pizza places in the country, so I didn't want to hear it. Speaking of these tiles, one of my patrons proposed a fantastic idea I hadn't thought about. Basically getting a hold of some dominoes and painting them up custom style. That's a pretty damn cool idea, right? And Andre Joberg, dude, forgive my mispronunciation of your name, I haven't had enough beer yet. He jumped in with more ideas like replacing pips with skulls. Game on. That made me think of 3D STL files for Cascade tiles, not dominoes. It's fine. They can be called dominoes, whatever. I'm just being weird. Anyway, these two people having these conversation in the comments, it made me think of 3D STL files for Cascade tiles. That might be kind of cool. Man, you could even do custom sizes and custom engraved or relief designs on the backs. I mean, there's just a lot of possibilities with 3D printed tiles. Anyway, back to the document. So I laid out these rules for how a tile cascade works. I even came across a cool new game term, the spike, as in spiking the cascade, which is when you play a double because only half of a double's value can ever be blocked, unless you have a matching double, so I guess that would be a double spike. And I suppose I might need to put a glossary at the end of this document. I roughed out the combat rules next. I did the standard melee and range attack stuff, just basic information, and then I worked on the spellcasting rules, which also basically follow the combat mechanics, but I thought I'd add in this thing from D&D called, well, I mean, there's a lot of TTRPGs that have it, but I'm sure it probably originated in D&D, something called counterspell. And like I keep saying, all this stuff is a work in progress. Stuff's going to adjust over time as I play test, and I'm just running with ideas at this point. Is this how you design a game? I have no idea. That's why I'm asking. So this counterspell is a good example of how I'm approaching this. Right now, any figure with a mana pool. All right, I guess I need to talk about mana pools real quick. Man, this is all just a jumble of nonsense. I'm all out of order. Okay, I guess I should just start from the top. Might be the easiest thing to do. So, okay, at the top, at the beginning of the game, to play a game, you got to create a warband, right? This is how we get to the mana pool. Okay, so we got to create a warband or a group of minis to fight other minis strategically on a tabletop. That's the game, right? Also loot tables. But I wanted to see if I could find a name or term for warbands that fits the lore a little better and isn't not necessarily quite so generic, but isn't quite so specific in the term war. Don't get me wrong. I like the word warband, and this game is about, it's a skirmish game, so you are fighting other miniatures. It's just maybe warband doesn't fit the setting and subsequent storytelling for our little dudes down in the little train there. Like, instead of a campaign, these skirmish games often have campaign rules for running multiple scenarios over time and building a story there and leveling up characters, stuff like that. So, like, instead of a campaign, I think in the Cascade, you're going on an odyssey, or you're going down the Cascade. The word campaign has a military sort of vibe, and also, like, you return from a campaign if you survive, of course. But in the Cascade, you don't really have a home or a place to return to necessarily. I mean, undoubtedly, some people have set up a society in the top sphere, but those aren't the folks who are descending, right? Those are the folks staying put, the ones laughing at all the idiots chasing legends and hope for some kind of escape from the Cascade. It's kind of funny how everything has some sort of fractal-like echo of meaning, right, in life. Anyway, I found this old Greek term, phyle, P-H-Y-L-E. It means a social or political tribe or clan. There's a lot of quotes going on in this video today. Basically, it's a group of people, tribe or clan of people that have a group of people that have a common goal, I guess. It doesn't fit exactly right what I'm going for, but it's kind of cool as far as a word goes. Phyle with a P-H-Y. In the Cascade, you create a 5-member phyle, or, warband in generic skirmish game terminology. And right now I am working with a 5v5 setup. We'll see how that goes. It's just easier to try to balance things at this early stage, kind of working with a specific set number of miniatures on the table. So you're going to have 4 regular members, or symphilitai, which I totally understand is a ridiculous word to put in a game. It's the actual historic word for members of a phyle, and I'm just going to leave it in there for now. So what? Nothing's permanent. So anyway, you got to set up 4 members and 1 leader. Okay, so you can build a roster or, a phyle sheet with either custom built characters or pre-made archetype type members that are ready to go, or a combination of both. I haven't actually filled out the pre-made figures yet, but my thought is that while most gamers will probably want to make their own characters, the pre-mades that I can include in the book or the document can serve 2 purposes. 1, they can provide examples of how character builds look and work, and 2, they could be good for quick and easy game setups in case someone wants to, run a demo or quickly teach a friend how to play, etc. Again, I don't know if this will stick, but this is what's in here now, and we're just moving on. I also wanted to do a graphical format, like the way it's printed on a sheet for the phyle sheet. I wanted it to kind of hopefully fit on one piece of paper. So I'm stealing another RPG game term, and I'm calling these stat blocks. I know, I'm such an innovator. I'm really just a rogue, thief, scoundrel. Anyway, like I said, I'd really like the file to be able to be represented on a single sheet of paper with specific spots, to physically record with a pencil or whatever during a game. Stuff like damage and temporary bonuses or penalties to different stats. It also might be cool to be able to print these out and cut them up so you could kind of hold your file or warband like a deck of cards or something. In fact, maybe that would be a cool way to keep track of which figures have been activated or are waiting to be activated. You could like have you've got your members like a deck of cards or a hand of cards in your hand, and then you could put one face down after you've activated that one, even though as the game progresses, you're still going to need to access the stat blocks for multiple characters. So I'm probably just making nonsense up right now. What else is new? I created a base leader stat block and a base Simplify stat block. Now, to build a custom leader, you get 8 points to add however you want to the base stats, and for regular dudes, you get 6 points to add to their base stat blocks. With one limitation, of course. For leaders, you can add a maximum of 3 points to any one stat, and for regular members, you can add a maximum of 2 to any stat in there. Now, here's where I'm getting a little wild. You can add points to any stat except armor. That includes movement and hit points, or health. Armor, you're going to choose from the gear list, and of course we have some various armor stats based on the type of armor. Like if you want to be a wizard and wear full plate armor or Space Marine Ceramite, you'll just lose a mana point from your mana pool. Conversely, you can wear the traditional wizard robes, cloth, armor, whatever, and gain both a mana point and an inch of movement. That's kind of crazy, right? I have no idea if that's balanced or not. We'll find out. You distribute your points to your stats, you choose some armor, and you choose abilities. Leaders get to choose 2 abilities, and Simplify get to choose 1. Now, I had fun just roughing out some ideas for abilities, and we'll talk more about them after I test them out a little bit. Now, finally, here's where the mana pool thing comes in. Leaders, you'll notice, start with 2 mana points. The regular guys start with 0, but you can put points into the mana pool when you make the character. Right? So any figure or character with a mana pool, which just means you have points in the mana stat, gets to choose which spells the figure has learned, selecting 1 spell for each mana point they have. And then when you level up or however you get awarded more mana points in the future, that's how you learn new spells. Now, the exception to this rule is Counterspell. Any figure who has a mana pool automatically knows Counterspell, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you get to learn. And Counterspell can be fired off the moment an enemy figure casts a spell, within some, line of sight and distance rules. Now, of course, it's going to cost tiles and mana points to cast Counterspell. I mean, to cast literally any spell is going to cost a minimum of 1 tile and 1 mana point. So even though all figures with a mana pool could try to counter a spell, there are tactical choices to be made each and every time. And of course, only one figure can try to counter a cast spell. It's not like you could have all 5 of your figures on the board, try one after the other to counterspell. At least not yet, anyway. And speaking of spells, I had fun coming up with, so far, it looks like 24 spells. A lot of generic stuff in there. And you might notice there's another term here. There are spells and formulae. But that's mostly a cosmetic thing, which I'll explain in a video when we go over the magic system. We'll talk more about those 2 things. I did write this blurb in there for leaders because their base stat block starts with 2 mana, and I was thinking if you really don't want to have a leader who casts spells, maybe you could trade those 2 mana points in during character creation for a 3rd ability instead. I'm not sure yet if that's a good idea. It might be cool to just say, well, if you don't want to cast spells, you can always, you'll always still at least have access to being able to cast Counterspell. And maybe you're just kind of stuck with that, but I am trying to go with this whole idea of as much player agency as possible in creating their characters and stuff. And then lastly, there's also a stat called load, which is basically how much stuff you can carry. Each item will have a load rating, and the figure can carry whatever items they want as long as they fit within their load stat. Armor, of course, has load ratings, basically weight, and so do weapons and items and potions and grenades and whatever else. And the leader will get to select 1 item from the leader's starting item list. But I haven't written that list up yet, and maybe it won't be its own table. Maybe it'll just be picking from one of the loot tables. We'll see. But loot tables brings me to the ChatGPT thing. So, of course, we got to have loot tables. I mean, aren't loot tables the reason we play all these games? Come on. So I haven't written up the items yet, but I've got ideas for, you know, potions and oils and some basic stuff. But I was starting to fill out a table for random loot drops, and I just started laying some stuff out in order of rarity. I was just sort of making up on the fly, right? And then I caught myself. In this game, we're doing random selection by drawing a tile, not by rolling a die. So the first thing I noticed was that a basic table would need 13 items, or would have 13 possible numbers that you could draw, because you can draw from 0 to 12 out of a domino set, right? The double space tile all the way up to the double sixes. And then I was like, what if there's a table where you draw 2 tiles and add them up? That would give us 23 possible items, or 23 possible numbers, results, right? But then I was like, well, what are the chances of drawing certain numbers? Because, you know, domino sets have 28 tiles, but there are only 13 possible results if you're drawing 1. And I wondered how many results are possible if you draw 2. But, I mean, look at me. I can't do complicated math. I'm a self-employed video guy who makes shit up. So I just made ChatGPT do the math for me. And then I made it generate some graphs out of those statistics that it came back with. It turns out when drawing 2 tiles, you can have 378 combos that give you results from 1 to 23. But as you can see, there are like X number of different ways to, say, end up with an 11. So these graphs will help me quite a bit in making random tables for use with drawing random dominoes. Like, it's good to know that the chance of drawing a 23 by drawing 2 tiles out of a bag has a whopping 0.265% chance of happening. That's crazy. On a 20-sided die, every number has a 5% chance of appearing. If I list an item in the table on the 23 result line, there's only going to be a 1/5 of 1% chance that someone might actually win that item, which means a 23 isn't really usable in a practical sense. So I'm not sure yet, but maybe drawing 2 tiles for a result isn't practical at all. I mean, of course, I can combine numbers. Like, you know, I could list an item that someone could win if they got, say, 20, a 21, a 22, or a 23, you know, which would end up giving that item like a 3.5 chance, like a 3.5% chance of being won, or, you know, landed on by the player. But that's still really small, less than the D20 number, right? So if I have to end up combining numbers, there might not be any way to practically list, you know, more than 10 items in a table. Even, you know, a 1 tile table probably won't have more than 10 unique items, even though it has a spread of 0 to 12, 13 possible choices. The tiles at the very end are just so unlikely to happen. And maybe a 2 tile table could have, you know, 15 items. So maybe I've got a range. Anyway, I don't know. This is all just like, I got to do more study, basically, and see what works out. But at least I'm aware of this stuff now, which I find pretty interesting. Okay, so I guess we'll cut it here. I mean, so that's like stuff about creating a warband. That's like one of the first sections in the book, right? So, I mean, a file. It's about, we've just learned how to create a file in the Cascade. This is a rough draft, I said. I'm going to go back to work on it while the working's hot. And you should be getting on with your hobbying too. Just sit in the damn chair. See ya. Also, don't let anyone tell you what you should be doing. Just do your thing. But also, sit in the chair.